a continuation of our previous chapter. In fact, this is given as a separate chapter, even though it is a continuation. In the last chapter, what we dealt is atoms in a crystalline solid vibrates or oscillates. Atoms not only in crystalline solids, atoms in every material vibrates or oscillates or moves. Last year we saw in physical chemistry that atoms in a gas are under constant motion. Is it not? So when atoms vibrate, it produces waves. Each individual atom has contributed what's called a phase wave. But we see things together from a crystal and we call that wave a group wave. All these group wave has its velocity and phase wave has its velocity. What else we saw last chapter is when atoms vibrate, this vibrational frequency, if we can get the vibrational frequency. And for vibrational frequency, we can depend on the velocity of sound through a solid, from where we can get the velocity, the frequency, and using which we can calculate a lot of these mechanical properties of materials. And you have done a problem too. And there was a complaint that that problem is quite straightforward. It is not really worth for 30 marks. So we can think about reducing the marks after doing some more assignments. Okay. I think most of you did well for the assignments. What importantly we studied in the last chapter is when atoms vibrates, they produce discrete particles. It's not actually particle. They are called quasi-particle. Quasi, quasi. Quasi means fake, appear like, is the meaning. So phonons are quasi-particle. They are not really particles, but they appear like particles. So what we saw last chapter is when atoms vibrate, it emits phonon. And the property of phonon is it is quantized, means it's discrete. So atomic vibration has wave-like properties and atomic vibration has particle-like properties too. Waves, we know how to characterize them: wavelength, frequency, dispersion relation, and so on. Particles, we deal with momentum, energy, and so on. So the discrete particles or quantized lattice vibration, they are called phonons. And we will be dealing more about how phonons are used to explain. How did we explain the thermal properties of material? That's the chapter. This chapter is mainly dedicated to it. Here we will be studying something called specific heat of crystals, and where we will study density of states. And I'm sure you don't understand what it is. An Einstein model of heat capacity, and then ultimately Debye model of heat capacity. These are the things that we will deal in this chapter. Okay, let's go. This is what I just told you. What we need to remember from the previous chapter is what are actually phonons. What are phonons? Phonons are quantized lattice vibration, quantum means they are discrete. Something like what? There's something like what? The grains, the salt grains in a salt tumbler. Suppose you go and take the salt tumbler in your house or the sugar bottle and salt bottle, we see salt. When we look from outside, they look as if it is single one, but when we put our hands in it, we see that they are really not one, they are discrete, quantum. Hmm? So that's called the discreteness. Everybody has its individuality, its discrete lattice vibration. They are called phonons. And we have seen that the energy of an elastic mode of angular frequency omega is equal to, we also studied this, and we have studied that n is the number of phonons, and in the last chapter we assume that at absolute zero n is equal to zero, means the number of phonons is equal to zero. Okay, and how in this chapter we will learn more about that, how n becomes zero at absolute zero. All right. So when n is equal to zero, that lattice, the total energy becomes half h cross omega. It was in the quiz, and most of you made it correct, but some made it wrong too. All right. So let's go here. The first thing we need to study in this chapter is specific heat capacity. Can you read that title? It is specific heat capacity. Let's analyze this word, what you should understand by this term, specific heat capacity. Capacity, you know, right? Yeah, the ability to do something, the ability to hold. So heat capacity means the ability to hold heat, right? The ability to hold heat. So how do we hold heat? Let me tell you an example. For example, some people, when they eat, they become fatty, right? And some people, whatever they eat, it cannot be seen in their body, right? This is a very good example to explain you what is heat capacity means. So just consider that eating habit of two people, they are eating the same quantity of food, but one is getting fattier and fattier, while the other guy, nobody knows where all these things he has eaten has gone. Okay, so here we provide something. The input is food, eating is absorption, and when we provide something, food, and we can see that what is happening there, and the other one, no, we can't see what is happening there. So similarly, heat capacity means the ability to hold heat. Against what? If we think that getting fat here is increasing temperature, one is increasing temperature easily, and the other one, you don't see it, right? So how do we say this? The ability or the amount of heat required to rise temperature, that's what heat capacity is. Something similar to what I said this. The ability to get fattier with input. Input is food, right? Same thing. Heat capacity is the ability to rise temperature, and we need to define it. And how do we define it? The amount of heat required to rise the temperature of 1 kilogram substance is called heat capacity. All right, the amount of heat required to rise the temperature of not really 1 kilogram, temperature of a substance is called heat capacity. Okay, so similarly we can define a food capacity, right? Something similar. What is food capacity and what is heat capacity? And there is one more term there, specific. I'm sure you have heard this term specific in your previous plus two means what the A level also. Specific. When we say this one specific, how do we? What is the what's the meaning of this word specific? What are you saying specifically? Can you specify that? And these kind of words, right? Specific means something really specific. We need to define it, what it is. Specific heat capacity means heat capacity is specified on something. So in physics, when you heard this term specific, you should understand that it is referring to some sort of unity. Means one. Not unity means one. Here, one. Unity, I mean like one. Heat capacity. So specific heat capacity is heat capacity specified on something. Here, something is quantity. Quantity is one. 1 watt. Usually, in the case of heat capacity, it is 1 kilogram. Okay. So if we define this specific heat capacity, we can define like is the amount of heat required to rise the temperature of 1 kilogram of material or 1 kilogram of a crystal is the specific heat capacity of the crystal. So you can distinguish between heat capacity and specific heat capacity. Heat capacity means the amount of heat required to rise the temperature of the entire thing. But when it comes to specific, it is 1 kilogram. All right. So that's why you know how to define that. Now, this is a mathematical expression for that. This is means CV is equal to dou U by dou T at V, constant V is the way mathematically expressing it. CV is usually represented for the specific heat capacity. And there are two types of specific heat capacity. One is specific heat capacity at constant volume, and the other is specific heat capacity at constant pressure. Okay, it's a detailed subject. Probably you would have learned it, or if you are interested, we can discuss further about it. So CV is the specific heat capacity at constant volume. U is the internal energy. This is one of the places where when we say U is, otherwise you are, right? Okay. U is the specific heat capacity. Sorry, U is the internal energy or the heat given. T is the temperature. So usually instead of du, dou Q is more preferred, means it can directly related to heat. Q is the quantity of heat. Here, U is the quantity of internal energy, both the same. Okay, so here, dou U by dou T, dou U, you know that this internal energy may be depend on many things, and at this time, the derivative is taken only with respect to temperature, and all the other variables are considered constant. Okay, so that's how specific capacity is defined or expressed mathematically. Now, we need to come to this case bit logically. Suppose we have consider an atom. Consider an atom at the center of a coordinate system. Somebody asked me a question. Yeah, Link, can you please record it and share it with them later? Otherwise, it's good to give them access to the lectures later too. Okay, you consider an atom sitting at the origin of a coordinate system, something like this one. This is the x-axis, this is the y-axis, so z-axis, and see that your atom is sitting here. Okay, and you are giving some energy to this atom, and when this atom gets energy, it vibrates. So how can we say the vibration? Means some part of it will be vibrating along this direction, some part will be vibrating, or some of the energy will be used to vibrate along this, some of the energy along this one, some of the energy along this one. Okay, so that's what the equipartition theorem means. It means that, oh, and another thing is this atom can vibrate only this one, or this one. Means wherever it vibrates, we can make them as components of this axis, and this axis. Okay, that's what it means. So it's called what is that? The number of ways it can vibrate or it can move in physics is called the degree of freedom. Okay. So degree of freedom here is 3. 1, 2, and 3. All right. Then, according to this equipartition theorem, whenever we give energy, it can be that energy is utilized for utilized equally. EQ partition means divide. EQ means same division. There is no partiality. Whatever be the amount of energy given this one, the equal part will be along this we used to vibrate along this direction, equal along this direction, and equal along this direction. That's called the equipartition theorem. Means the theorem states that the heat or the energy given to a system is equally distributed among its various degrees of freedom. Okay, and the share of 1 degree of freedom is equal to half kBT. That's what I written here. The share of 1 degree of freedom is equal to half kBT. All right. Okay, and then how do we write the total energy? We have half kBT is along 1, and we have 3 directions, means then it will become 3 by 2 kBT. All right, 2 is both direction, 1 direction and the other, means one is 2 and the other is 4. Okay, 2 and 4, and N is the number of molecules. So when we write all these things, what we get? We get like these 2 and these 2 goes, means 3 N kBT. N kb, number of degree of freedom. Sorry, the total number of this is the total number of molecules. Total number of molecules. Kb is equal to Boltzmann constant. There is a relation saying that, or Kb is defined. I think we have studied this in last year physical chemistry. The relationship between N is the Avogadro number and Kb is the Boltzmann constant. Boltzmann constant and Avogadro number is related with R is equal to, R is the universal gas constant, is equal to N kb. So we can get this equal to 3 N kBT, and when we take a derivative with respect to T, 3 N kBT is derivative with respect to T is 3 N kb. N kb is equal to R, means Cv is equal to 3R. That's what classically we can say about specific heat capacity of every solid. You need to understand this. So we are approaching classically in this case. To study the specific heat capacity, we need to give the system is here a material with n number of atoms here. There is a material with n number of atoms, or 1 mole of a substance is given a heat, and that heat will be distributed equally among various degrees of freedom. The share of 1 degree of freedom is equal to half kBT, and the total energy of the system then become 3 into 2 into n into half kBt. Then when we multiply and take a derivative of t, we get Cv is equal to 3R. R is a constant, you know, right? The gas constant is a constant, 8.3 into 8.3 joules per moles per Kelvin is its way. Means the classical theory says that, classically we can say that Cv is a constant and is equal to 3R. This principle is called Dulong-Petit law. It was, I don't remember, I think it was sometime during 18th century. This theorem is established, Dulong-Petit law. So according to Dulong-Petit law, what it says, the sweet gas capacity of every solid is equal to same and is a constant. And we now very clear that it is not going to be same. For example, when we take this mug, this mug and heat it, and I have another mug steel, and if we heat both of them, we know that what happened when the temperature in one of them will rise fast, whereas the temperature in one of the other doesn't rise fast. Means that both materials have different specific capacities. Right? Means at the first sight we can say that Dulong-Petit law is not really correct. All right. Okay. And now you look at the graph here. Are you seeing the graph? I hope you are seeing. This is why I really miss a class. I cannot hear what you say.
Yes, Prof.
Okay, and if we are saying all the yes, Prof, this is going to be a mess. So I can say still some voice will make me awaken. Otherwise, I will sleep. Some of you are doing that, I think. Okay, so look at this graph. It is a graph with temperature along the y-axis and Cv means what? Specific capacity at constant volume along the y-axis. Okay, and there is a dotted line you can see something near to 25. What is 25 here? Here R is equal to 8.3, right? 8.3 times 3. How much it is? 3 3s are 9, 8 3s are 24. 24.9, right? This is that value. 3R is equal to 24.9 or nearly 25. And that is this 25. Okay. So it says that this dotted line is a representation of Dulong-Petit law. But the experimental measurements is not really following or in analogous ways the Dulong-Petit law. Experimental heat capacity measurements deviates from Dulong-Petit law. Where is it deviating? At what temperature? So at low temperature it deviates. See here, the red line here is that of lead. Okay, see it goes sharply rise and becomes saturated at some point similar to 3R. And this one, the blue, we can say that it is also going and probably it is going to be stabilized among 3R. And there is aluminum in the green. You saw that same trend, it's also going similar. And in the bottom, you can see diamonds. Diamond, it is very hard to heat up diamond, right? Just like the other guy who eats everything but doesn't show up where it has gone. That's the guy with diamonds. It takes all the heat, but it doesn't rise the temperature. We say that it has a high heat capacity. Whereas lead is a low heat capacity material. Why? Very less amount of temperature is required to rise the temperature. What about diamonds? No, we need a lot of energy to rise the temperature of diamonds. Why is it so? We'll see. Okay, so did you see this? And we go to the next slide. In this here, what you see here is y-axis same, okay, but the x-axis something or the temperature is divided by something else. Forget for the time being what is the something else. We'll come to this and see that every curve joins together, right? every curve joins together, but the temperature where it saturates means become equal to that of Dulong law is different probably. Okay, so let me read what is written in this slide. What you should observe is the x-axis of this figure. What we did is we divide temperature by something else, another temperature probably. D is also there, and it's called divide temperature. We will learn it in detail later. So what is done here is normalization. When the temperature is normalized with respect to a characteristic temperature called debate temperature, forget about this debate temperature for the time being. You just understand that when we divide temperature by something else, a universal behavior means everything behaves the same, right? And the story of this development, why, what made people to divide by this is the history of phonemes, and actually the correct explanation for specific capacity of solids. Okay, this slide is probably, it contains some other unusual mathematical symbols, right? And you look at that slide and see the mathematical equations there. You don't really like to look at them, right? Nobody, in fact. Okay, but it has a lot of beauty with it. So you can realize that you can enjoy the beauty once you understand that. So the first one is we have CV, means specific capacity at constant volume is equal to dou U by dou T at constant V. Means that, yeah, now you consider an atom at the center of a coordinate system. You consider a coordinate system 3 axis, x-axis, x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. Okay, just like this one. An atom here, and the internal energy is means it vibrates along this direction, along this. The total energy of all these vibrations is the total internal energy. Okay, the internal energy of the crystal is the sum of vibrational energies along this direction, along this direction, and along this direction. We neglect the contribution from electronic energy as the motivation is to obtain a contribution. Okay, forget what is written in the red. It's not. It is important, but you will understand what it is when you complete this chapter. Okay. Now, what is written here is, you see a letter here. This is called sigma. Sigma stands for a summation. Something is summed over. Okay. And if the sigma is not there, you understand what is it? N plus half h cross omega, right? N plus half h cross omega is the total energy of vibration. N is the number of vibrators, and h cross is, I think I have told you in the previous class also, h cross is a constant called h by 2 pi. Omega is the frequency. Here, what is actually frequency is all atoms in a solid. We consider that the solid is arbitrary. It's not like what we have in the previous chapter, monoatomic crystal or a diatomic crystal. Think that it's a crystal with n number of atoms. N types of atoms, not number of atoms. N types of atoms. So each atom will vibrate with a frequency depends on its mass. The heavier the mass is vibration energy, it cannot vibrate faster, right? Frequency is less. If the one is smaller, it can vibrate faster. Okay, so the vibrational frequency of an arbitrary solid means there are n type of vibrators, then it varies. Varies in terms of what? Its wave vector k, it should be small p, small k, and p is usually represented for momentum. Okay, so the only variable in this situation is omega, means frequency. Frequency of an arbitrary solid, arbitrary means n types of atoms. It varies. So each vibrator, oscillator has its own wave vector and momentum. And when we take all these wave vector and then put it in this equation, we get the total energy. And this symbol sigma says that we have summed up all these quantities. Okay, so there is a case equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. P is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. If we sum, this equation says that all those components are summed up. Okay. All right. So this is what the exact one. Okay. In that kind of mechanics, it is motion of body, right? What is moving here is atoms. Consider the motion of a bus and the motion of an atom. Both are moving. But motion of a bus we can easily visualize, we can easily calculate, predict, and all those things because we can see it. But what about atoms? Can we see them? No, right? So it is dealt by a different branch of mechanics. It's called quantum mechanics. In quantum mechanics, we cannot say anything very precisely. So how can we say that the total number, the atom vibrates this much? Can we say that? And when this atom vibrates, it emits this number of phonons. Can we say that? We cannot say precisely. So when we have to deal with quantum particles, the best way to explain quantum particles is microscopic or things which cannot be seen through the naked eye. But that's not a very concrete definition. But for your understanding, consider that. So things which cannot be seen directly is quantum particle. So when we have to explain the behavior of quantum particle which cannot be directly observed, then we don't have that kind of certainty that we can describe this motion when the body can be seen, right? So here, what are oscillating is atoms, which is a quantum particle. There, our confidence of saying something is not really big. And that's a practice in quantum mechanics. We express things as average, not overage. Okay, average thing. So we average out things. Here, the number of phonons, we say that it is an average number of phonons. And that's why when you see here, n is written in a bracket. When you see some quantity written in this bracket, it means that it is an average quantity, and the mechanics under consideration is mostly quantum mechanics. And see here, how is it the average number of phonons? It is given by 1 by exponential h cross omega, means e raised to h cross omega by kBt minus 1. And this is called Bose-Einstein distribution. This is another branch of mechanics called statistical mechanics, and this can be derived. We don't have time for that, so we just accept it as such. Means the average number of phonons is equal to 1 by h cross omega, 1 by exponential h cross omega by kBt minus 1. Right? Let's go to the next one. So this is the average energy of average number of phonons is equal to the total number of phonons is equal to this one. Total means average. And now when we say about the energy of quantum particle, we say that it's average energy, not the exact energy, right? The average energy of a single oscillator. What is that? This is the average number of 1 by exponential x cross omega by kBt minus 1 is the average number. And when we multiply this average number by energy of one phonon or one oscillator, energy of one phonon is equal to h cross omega or h nu. Both are correct. H cross is equal to 2 pi, h by 2 pi, omega is equal to 2 pi nu or 2 pi f. This 2 pi gets cancelled, we get h nu. Okay, so average energy of a single oscillator is equal to average number of particles times the average, times the energy of an oscillator. And in terms of the total energy, we sum over all possible vibrations, means sigma k p h cross omega kp, and here also this omega should also have this kb k and p. I just missed it. Okay, and assuming the solid to be continuous, at least in periodicity, and for this you have to again go back to your kitchen and take your sugar bottle out. Okay, in your sugar, when we look from outside or from a distance, we feel that that's completely warm. But when we put our hand there or spoon there, we see that it is not warm. Okay, it is discrete. So we need to consider both. Here, let us look from outside, means the sugar is continuous. Continuous, the best example of continuous material is liquid. And liquid is solid, we can make them powder it and can take a part of that powder some way. But we cannot do that in the case of liquid. We cannot take, for example, we take a glass of water, we cannot pick one molecule from it because it is continuous. All right. So assuming the solid to be continuous, means we look the sugar bottle from outside, it is continuous. The summation can be replaced by integration. That's the difference between this symbol. This symbol sigma is to some discrete one or individual one, and sigma here is replaced by integration if the summation, if there is some sort of continuity. Probably you would have learned all these things in calculus, continuity, and if we have to add continuous variables, we use a symbol. We use the operation integration. Okay, this is summation and this integration. So assuming the solid to be continuous, at least in the lattice periodicity, the summation can be replaced by integration. Okay, and to integrate, we have to define an interval where the integration is done in a peculiar way. We have to consider a small region dx or delta x. Go back to your calculus, dy by dx, right? That dx is that small increment in x where the y is assumed to be a constant. All right, here dx. So what is our dx here? And to define that, let d omega, 1d, d of omega, that d, and this is d omega, is the number of states within a surface of constant frequency omega and d omega. Consider this thing here. I have shown a figure here. In fact, I have drawn it by myself. This actually gold atoms in a crystal. Okay, and when we look from four kinds, we can say that they are continuous. And there I provide a dotted line, and dotted line is the region d omega, small d omega, and within which interval this quantity capital D omega remains a constant. Okay. So d omega is the number of states within a surface of constant omega and omega plus d omega. Here, there is one more word there, states. The number of states. Did you really understand what does it means? Number of states. Suppose if it is in the case of Malaysia, number of states in Malaysia, we can say how much it is, right? And what is this number of states? What state is referring to it? Okay, so that's a typical question. To explain this, I am taking you as an example. Are you always in the same state? Means that are you always in Pahang or Kalandar? That's not my question. My question is, are you always happy? Are you always gloomy? Are you always moody? Are you always under excitement? These are all states, right? Your states. Right? So we can have different states depends on our mood. That's how it is defined in solids also. In solids, the mood is vibration. Okay, something is vibrating very slowly and something is vibrating very fast. So that state, the number of vibrational states. Or vibrational states means number of energy states. When it vibrates slowly, it doesn't have much energy. So like you doesn't have much energy. And some are vibrating very vigorously, right? It has a lot of energy. Means this quantity d omega is the number of states, number of energy states or number of vibrational states within a surface of constant omega and d omega. We assume that this region where I separated them using a dotted line, there this vibrational states remains constant. Okay, so we define a surface and the energy at this one is equal to h cross omega exponential h cross omega by kBt minus 1. And when we integrate with respect to d omega, we get the total energy. That's what it means. Okay, so the total energy is equal to h cross omega by exponential kb integral h cross omega by exponential h cross omega by kBt minus 1 d omega. Okay, look at this equation again. H cross, that is h by 2 pi means Planck's constant, we know. Right? Omega is the frequency. We can find it in some way from, we can get omega, what is that? And the approximate value of omega can be measured by measuring the sound velocity through a crystal. Because you did a problem last week. Omega can be determined. What about this one? D omega. Okay, and that is of particular significance in solid state physics. That quantity is called density of states. Again, what it is? Density of states. What state is this? Is it Pahang, Kalandan, Para, Johor? That state? No. This state is energy state. Density of energy states. Okay, so the atoms in a crystal do not have all atoms in a crystal have their energy constantly varies. Okay, and there is we define the total energy within a given interval. That's called the total energy divided by total volume of that interval is the density of states. So in central problem in solid state physics is to find out the density of states. To find out, you should clearly understand the meaning of it. What is density of states? Okay, it means that the density of energy states. All right. This is a question. Show that the contribution of phonons to the lattice heat capacity is given by Hmm. Can you do this problem? Not necessarily now. Let me give you mark for this. I'll give you 5 marks for this. Okay. How to do this? Look at this one. This is U, right? U means it's not U. This is the total energy, right? Energy U. And when we take a derivative of U with respect to temperature, what we get? C, right? When we take the derivative of this U with respect to temperature, we get what? We get CV. And that's what I asked you here. Take the derivative of this equation and show that it is equal to this one. Okay, guys, I'll give you 5 marks if you can solve this one and send me as an assignment. And what I written here is that the derived expression for density of states of an elastic non-dimensional generalized it for 3 dimensions. Forget it. You don't have to do it. But if you do this one and send me 5 marks. So many of you said that the previous question is actually not worth for 30 marks. So shall we go for 10 marks for that? So the previous one, the previous one is what? The previous one before that was 20. Let's take the previous one as 15, half of that, and this is 20. Okay, 20 plus 20, 40. We need to have 60 more marks to complete the assignment one. I hope we can easily get that. Okay. So this is going to be 5 more questions for you. All right. Give me a moment for a biological break. Let's come back at 9. Okay. Let's start again by 9. Give me a biological break. Okay, guys. I saw that I did not see Sadish, and he said that he is eating. Means he should be very fatty. I would like to see you once. Okay. See that. All right, let's continue. So what we need to do next is, I hope my mic is on. Is on, right? Okay. So what we need to do is, next is understanding things more clearly than the what? Than the equipartition theorem. Okay. So the first attempt was done by, in fact, more attempts. The first successful or acceptable attempt was by Albert Einstein. And he tried to look at this scenario a different way. We know this graph, right? Temperature, what is that? Specific capacity is plotted against temperature, and we see different behavior. And the dotted line is Dulong period law, and the actual behavior is not actually in line with the Dulong period law. All right. Now start reading what is written here. Employing Planck's quantum theory, Einstein assumed that crystalline solid containing n atoms could be regarded as an array of independent atomic oscillators in 3 independent directions. Can you read that? Employing Planck's quantum theory, Einstein assumed that crystalline solid contains n atoms could be regarded as an array of independent atomic oscillators. Okay, that's actually the origin of attaching atomic vibration to the crystal's behavior. Here we have seen that the atoms are vibrating. We studied it first. Then only we are coming to some model to explain how historically things were developed. Okay. Here, what Einstein did is he considered the Planck's quantum theory. Planck's quantum theory considers the light energy as discrete quantum of phonons. Sorry, quantum of photons, not phonons. The light consists of discrete photons, and lattice vibration is phonons. And some of you made that mistake in the quiz also. Okay, that's quantum theory. Einstein assumed that crystalline solid containing n atoms. Consider a crystalline solid crystal, like sodium fluoride. There are sodium atoms, chlorine atoms, and all these chlorine and sodium atoms are vibrating independently. Means sodium atom vibrates, it doesn't have any relation with the vibration of chlorine atom. Chlorine atom vibrate the way it is, and sodium atom vibrate the way it is. So he considered that regarded as an array of independent, means the vibration is not depending on one another. Okay, it's not mutually independent. In three independent directions, it can vibrate along x-axis, y-axis, or z-axis. It's not like that. It is vibrating only x-axis, y-axis, or z-axis. It can vibrate along any direction in space. But any of these direction space can be resolved into three components. That's what it means. All right. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. And this equation we have seen it before. Average energy of a single oscillator. Average energy of a single oscillator is equal to, we have seen it, h cross omega divided by exponential h cross omega by kBt minus 1. All right. Planck distribution for 1 degree of freedom. Yeah, this is some other historical relevance I noted there. If you don't want it, forget it. This is the average energy of a single oscillator. Average energy. Okay. This in brackets, we term it as an average. Since it is E, it is energy. And this is h cross omega is the energy of one oscillator. And 1 by exponential h cross omega kBt minus 1 is the average number of oscillators. Okay, this is one oscillator. Now we have one oscillator in one direction. We have three directions, means we will multiply it with 3. And we have n atoms, means to get the total energy, we will multiply it with n. Right? 3 n and average n. Right? What is this? 3 is 3n and average n is the total energy. We substitute 3n and average n is equal to here h cross omega by exponential h cross omega by kBt minus 1 for all degree of freedom for all the n oscillators. Okay, and then when we take the derivative of this with respect to t, we get dou u by dou t at v is equal to 3nk into h cross omega. Okay, so we need to derive it. All right. Need to take the derivative of this one. How to take the derivative? 3n is a constant, and we need to take the derivative with respect to t, means that we consider all the other thing, including omega, as constants. So when we take that one, we get an expression like this one. Would you like to do it? Can you solve this? Take the derivative of u. Can I give you this as another assignment? It doesn't have to be. That's just a mathematical exercise. There is not much physics in it. So it's fine. It's okay to accept it as such. 3nk into x cross omega by kbt into exponential x cross omega by kbt divided by exponential x cross omega by kbt minus 1 the whole square. So you can imagine that this is, what is that, minus 1 by x. 1 by the derivative of 1 by x is equal to 1 by x square minus 1 by x square. Here x is equal to this one. That's why this becomes square. Okay. Try do it. It is it's an interesting exercise to take the derivative of functions. So this equation is called the Einstein's model of specific heat. Okay. All right. Now let's go to draw this one. What you see here is again a graph. Along the x-axis, you see temperature divided by another function, and this one theta e is called the Debye temperature. Sorry, that's called the Einstein's temperature. We will define it what it is. And what you see here, you can see there are two things. One is dotted one. So there are some dots. Okay. And there is a continuous line. It is not really continuous, but it is supposed to be continuous. Okay. So this dotted one are the experimentally measured points, the experimentally measured specific capacity. What is shown here is specific capacity at constant pressure. It's not constant volume, but this one is, I took this one to give you an understanding how Einstein model is fitting with the experimental one. See, when we consider with Dulong-Pettit law, the scenario has completely changed, right? We can map or the Einstein model. This is the Einstein's model. This equation is the Einstein model, and that equation, when you plot here, you get a shape like this one. Okay, this is the Einstein model plotted, and this is the experimental points. So now we conclude that, okay, this Einstein model agrees with the experimental one to a great extent, but not exactly. Okay, to a great extent it agrees. For example, at low temperature, see that here the temperature is low, right? It's not fitting very well. But in the mid temperature, it's okay, and in the low temperature also to some extent. And here the reason why it is deviating is because the larger deviation here. All right. Then there are two cases. The first case is show that at high temperature, Einstein's relation follow Dulong-Pettit law. At high temperature, look at this question. Show that at high temperature, Einstein's relation follow Dulong-Pettit law. Here I give some hint. Let's go to this one. Okay. This is our expression for heat capacity according to Einstein's model. Here saying that at extreme high temperature, right? At high temperature, when we look at this one, how can we say that high temperature case here? Everywhere we have a we have a quotient H cross omega by kBt. High temperature means what? That's a hint given here. High temperature means kBt is very, very greater than H cross omega. Okay. Okay. T is high than omega. Kb and H cross are constant. All right. So it means that H cross omega is very, very less than kBt. Temperature is high. If H cross omega is very, very less than kBt, what about the value of H cross omega by kBt? H cross omega by kBt is going to be very, very less than 1, right? Let us divide kBt on both sides of the here. Here H cross omega by kBt divided by kBt by kBt. kBt by kBt is 1. This is H cross omega by kBt. So H cross omega by kBt is very, very less than 1. And if H cross omega by kBt is very, very less than 1, exponential H cross omega by kBt we can simplify as 1 plus H cross omega by kBt. So that's the condition. That's the condition you need to apply here. Where at high temperature, wherever you see H cross omega by kBt, replace it by 1 plus H cross omega by kBt. All right. Okay. All right. So just do this calculation. I give you 5 marks for this. And the second one, at low temperature, means the case has changed. Okay. Case has changed means H cross omega is very, very greater than kBt. Then e raised to H cross omega by kBt is very, very greater than 1. All right. Then you need to show that Cv is equal to this equation. And there, one more thing is there. We did not define theta E so far in this slide. Theta E is equal to H cross omega by kt. Theta E is equal to H cross omega by k is what theta is. Give me a moment, let me verify. Okay. Here theta E means H cross omega by kBt is equal to theta E by theta E by t. Means theta is equal to H cross omega divided by kb is what theta is. Okay. So this question 5, 10 marks, and there is another question 5, 15 marks. So do it as an assignment, all in one, and there comes another one. Another question. Silver obeys Dulong Petit law at room temperature where the diamond does not. Why? What is the minimum temperature above which the diamond obeys Dulong Petit law? Given that natural frequencies of silver and diamond are, we can solve this question. You don't have to solve this one at this moment. I will place it later. Don't have to solve it at this time. Okay. Now the last part in this course is the next model. According to when we look at Debye model, the Einstein model, the Einstein model do not agree with the experiment at low temperature. There is some problem with Einstein model. Okay, so that problem has to be identified. What is actually the problem in Einstein model, and then correct it. Then go to the correct equation. That's what Peter Debye did. It's called the Debye model. All right. So, in which way Debye corrected is what is explains in this slide. Which way did he correct it? Start reading it. The first part is the Einstein's assumption, Einstein's logic. What was Einstein's logic? Einstein's logic was crystalline solid containing n atoms could be regarded as an array of independent atomic oscillators. Means atoms in a solid, they vibrate. They don't care how the other one is vibrating. Okay, that was his logic. Means they are all oscillators, but he did not consider the dependence of one atomic oscillation with another one, and that was the one corrected by Peter Debye. And how was it corrected? See, what are Debye's assumption? It is not, atoms are no longer independent. Okay, when we suppose you are all sitting in one class, very close packed class. So can one move without disturbing the other? No, right? If one is not moving, is the other one is not affected? No, if you are in a closed packed class. Means motion of one of them is certainly going to affect the other one. And that goes to the case of crystals, atoms in crystals too. When the atoms in crystal, so when the atoms in the crystal vibrate, they are no longer independent. They depend. That's what Debye's principle is. Means atoms are elastically coupled. Means we have one vibrate this way. It take the another atom along with, like this one. One is vibrating this way, another is vibrating this way. This. Okay. Atoms are elastically coupled. This is moving, then it moves the other one also. This is moving, it comes with this one also. Okay. So atoms are elastically coupled, so that they are no longer independent atomic oscillators. Therefore, instead of a single frequency, atomic vibrations in crystals give rise to a spectrum of frequencies. Spectrum means a collection of frequencies. All right, this is the Debye's assumption. And what is next is we need to derive them. Okay. According to Debye model, all modes, mode here means the mode of vibration. All right. We can consider, okay, all modes are not simultaneously excited when the crystal heat up from absolute zero. Have you read it? What does it mean? All modes are not simultaneously excited when the crystal heats from absolute zero. Mode here means the state of vibration. The best example I can tell you is that suppose I am going to a class and teaching. Is every student getting the same meaning instantaneously? No. Somebody get the meaning instantaneously, and someone bit later, and someone never get it. Right? That's how it is. Means when we heat a body, heat a crystal, there are atoms, and all the atoms do not absorb, or all the atoms do not start vibrating with the accepted energy immediately, simultaneously. Some are heavy atoms, they need more energy to vibrate, so they will wait until enough energy is gathered. Some are lighter atoms, and small energy is enough for them to vibrate, and they vibrate instantaneously. Some are next higher. Okay, they will wait for a bit more, but then when they get the bit more, they start vibrating. Okay, that's it. That is it. The next one is the heat given to a crystal is utilized to excite various modes in the crystal. In fact, that should be the first one. This should be the first one. The heat given to a system is utilized to excite various modes in the crystal. All modes are not simultaneously excited when the crystal heat from absolute zero. The next one is there is a certain temperature that a crystal can reach from single mode of vibration. Okay. So that has very significant. The third bullet has third point has a lot of meaning. You should understand that. There is a certain temperature that crystal can attain from a single mode of vibration. Consider sodium chloride. Sodium atoms are there, chlorine atoms are there. Sodium can start vibrating from a given input frequency, input energy, and when it start vibrating, its kinetic energy increases, and we will relate kinetic energy to the temperature. Means the temperature will keep increasing because of the vibration. Okay, and when suppose that there is only one mode is excited. Okay, and with that one mode, it can reach to a certain temperature, and that temperature has a lot of significance in solid state physics. All right. Okay, and now we need to, this slide I repeated from from before. We have seen this slide before to find out means to define what is called the density of state. All right. Okay. So let us stop here today. I don't want to complete all these things by today. I think we will require two more Fridays to complete this, and after this we have to write the test 1 and combining chapter 1, 2, and 3, most likely towards the end of this month. All right. So we are stopping here today. 13. Slide 13. Go read it, and if you have questions, ask me these questions in our WhatsApp group. Okay. It is to be recorded. I understand that, but when somebody is helping you, be thankful for that rather than going and fight with them. Okay. All right then, guys. Hello, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Farah. So,
Professor.
yeah.
Professor.
Yes, who is that?
Yeah, me, Kahar. Yeah, so I want to ask, right, Can you repeat the questions that we need to do for the exams? Yeah, I said
Was that how do you call it? Pronounce your name?
Kahan.
Kahan. Okay. Okay. So the first question is this one, right? Slide number 7. There is a question. So that is simply taking a derivative of the previous one for 5 marks. The next one is in slide 10. There are 2 questions. One is you need to show that high temperature and relation follow Dulong Petit law means CV is equal to 3R by assigning this condition. The next question is specific capacity can be expressed at low temperature. Specific capacity follows this equation, this expression, by assuming this condition. So our assignments are in slides number 7 and 10.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor.
All right. Any more questions, please? No question?
Prof,
Yes.
when you need to submit the assignment?
I did not hear you, Farah, very well. Can you speak it louder?
What is the due date for this assignment?
Assignment? Sorry again.
This assignment, what is the due date? What time?
Okay. As usual, Wednesday.
Alright.
Okay. So that's how we can remember our 2 classes. Any more questions? No question?
No, Prof.
Yes, please. Hey, you have to have questions. If you don't ask me question, I will assume that you did not understand anything. And another way of looking at it is, if there is no question, it is not interesting. Here we see that the historical way of evolution of heat capacity and understanding in heat capacity. Our initial ways is say initial models using classical theory said that heat capacity is equal to 3R. But when we look at the experiments, it's not so. Then how are we dealing with it? At low temperature, the heat capacity varies very much. And is no longer equal to 3R. What is happening there? Okay. Is that all right?